Say hello. She's not the friendliest, I'm not gonna lie. I don't actually think she likes me, to be fair. She scratches me like a cat, it's really odd. Does anyone else have like a chihuahua that just Look, she's actually trying to do it to my neck right now. Hey guys, my name's Megan if you're new here, and if not, welcome back for episode 20 of Killer Weekend, where each week we'll discuss a true crime case, and you guys can leave your thoughts in the comments box below. I feel like every week they get a wee bit more extra. So a few people were actually asking who this portrait behind me is of, and it's of my little doggy, Demon. But yeah, I thought I'd bring her on because she's so cute. Say hi, Scarlet. Her name's actually Scar from The Lion King, but we felt like giving her the full name of Scarlet might make it a bit more acceptable when we take her to the vet, you know, no judgment. So yeah, I just thought I'd bring her on and let you guys see her. What's that? What's that? You want him down? Okay. I will leave a small disclaimer at the beginning of this episode. It does involve details of violent crime. It also involves bad language, so if you don't like no sweary beasties, I would turn away now. Don't look, go away. Maybe a nice tutorial, maybe a nice brow tutorial like I'll have up next week. See how I did that there? If you like all things true crime, supernatural, spooky, conspiracy theory, then please hit that subscribe button. I'll be here for you every Friday with our Killer Weekend episode, and also every now and again for a Wednesday, a weirdo Wednesday, where we'll discuss something supernatural, conspiracy theory, spooky, UFO, and just downright unexplainable. If you also want to see what I'm up to in my day-to-day life, trust me, it's not that exciting, but if you would like to, please do subscribe to my personal vlog channel as well. The link for that is in the bio below, and I'll be there for you to discuss all things beauty, all things tattoos, all things graveyards, weddings, all that fun stuff in between that you don't get to see every week. How are y'all? You all good? Have you been doing well? You've been brushing your teeth, eating your greens? I bet you haven't. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, what I've been up to is I've literally been in a rabbit hole of creepypastas, and for those who haven't watched this week's episode of Weirdo Wednesday, shame on you, first of all, but fine, if supernatural's not your thing. And if you haven't, a creepypasta is essentially just a scary story that someone's made up and posted on a wiki site. And this was really popular in the kind of early 2000s, like 2010s. Not so much really anymore. It was kind of when the internet was shiny and new and everyone got really excited and thought, how can we terrify teenagers online? So essentially it's just a fictional story with fictional characters, and they're made to be as scary as possible, and what people would then do would be copy and paste, hence the reason it got the name Creepypasta after copy pasta. Get it? Got it? Good. So then what people would do is share it on Facebook, Bebo, MySpace, all that good stuff, and everyone would then think it was a true story. Someone knows someone who knows someone who's seen Slender Man, essentially. Now, I bet we're all wondering, with the mention of Slender Man, we all know who that is, don't we? The big, long, tall, creepy man. He's always in a suit. He allegedly makes friends with children, only to then abduct them and take them to his private mansion. Sounds suspect. But whether you believe in him or not, this week's duo did, and they took it to a whole new sinister level. You see, what happens when you mix the supernatural with the unnatural? We'll find out in this week's case, which will be the Slenderman Stabbing of Payton Leutner. It was Morgan Geyser's 12th birthday, and she decided that to celebrate this, she wanted to have a slumber party with her friends. So she was like, oh, do you know what we'll do? We'll go to the roller rink, which is actually one of the most like 2010 things that I've ever heard. In Scotland here, we actually don't really have roller rinks. It was more the kind of tacky local ice skating rink, and it just used to play techno, and then everyone would get off with each other at the end of the night. Yeah, not really the stuff dreams are made of, but that's what we had. But these three girls' night was a lot more wholesome. Along for the party was also 12-year-old Anissa Wire, and then Payton Leutner as well, who was also 12 years of age. The three girls had been friends for the last couple of years, and Anissa had actually recently joined the group. It was more so Payton and Morgan that were the close kind of knit friends. After the roller rink, the girls then went to get some frozen yogurt and get some pizza, and they headed back to Morgan's house. They were just playing, having fun, plain fancy dress, you know how you used to do that, and you do your lipstick and wear the wackiest of clothes that someone borrowed from someone's mum's 80s cupboard. So the girls were just enjoying themselves and having a laugh, and then all of a sudden Morgan kind of decided she wanted an early night, which Payton found a little bit strange because it was her birthday. Normally, Morgan wasn't allowed to stay up really late. Her parents were quite strict, and therefore she thought Morgan would take full advantage of this. But sadly, Morgan didn't want to stay up any longer. She said that she wanted to go to her bed, and all three of the girls then hit the hay and fell asleep. Payton awoke to find the two girls were actually downstairs playing on the computer, and the three girls had chatted with Morgan's mum about what they were going to do with the day. And because it was quite a nice day, even though it was still quite cold, it was quite crisp, quite sunny. So Morgan's mum said that on this occasion, because it was Morgan's birthday, the three girls were allowed to go to the local park unchaperoned. Now, this wasn't something they were normally allowed to do, so the girls were super excited about it and headed off out the door. When the girls got to the park, they started kind of playing just dumb games that kids play, like hide and seek, everything like that. And one of the girls said that she was going to count, that was Anissa, whilst the other two girls, Morgan and Payton, hid. So Payton got herself kind of in the woods of this park, and it had like a little wooded area, so she just ran in there for good coverage, and then she started to cover herself with leaves. And then one of the girls, Morgan, said that you could still see her, so told her to lie down flatter so that Anissa wouldn't get her. When Payton did lie down, she was suddenly ambushed and stabbed 19 times in the chest, arms and legs. These stab wounds would perforate her heart, her lungs and internal organs and miss one of her arteries by a millimetre. A millimetre. But who would have done this to a poor, defenceless 12-year-old girl? We'll soon find out. Payton Leutner was born on January 1st, 2002. She was born to her mother and father, Stacey and Joe, in Wisconsin. I would like to say the town that she's from. I will put it on the screen, but I cannot pronounce it, and I don't want anyone coming for me. Okay? So I tried, I failed, it's on the screen. Let me know if you know how to pronounce this. Payton was extremely empathetic. Her parents said she always put others before herself. She was just a really cute, kind young girl and was really, really studious as well. She always wanted to get her homework done on time. She was a bit of a goody two-shoes, which I think is actually a really nice thing, and she was just a really doting and loving person. One thing Payton's mum would say about her was that unfortunately she kind of saw the good in everyone, even when they didn't deserve it. She would always want to help people in need, and this sometimes wasn't the best choice for her in life. Sometimes she kind of overlooked the bad in people. When Payton was in 4th grade, her kindness was actually put to the test when she saw sitting alone a little girl named Morgan Geyser. Morgan was kind of a little bit odd, a little bit more withdrawn, and she was quite shy and kind of sullen looking. But Payton felt like she could bring out that kind of happy-go-lucky side in her, and she never wanted anyone to be sitting and left out and excluded from groups. So she went up to Morgan and made friends with her, and from that day on, they were inseparable. They were like sisters. Payton would say about Morgan that she was one of the funniest people that she knew, and that her jokes were absolutely hilarious. So even though Morgan was a little bit lonely, a little bit dark, she did have that kind of dark humour edge, and Payton thought this was just hilarious. She'd never met anyone like Morgan before. But as close as the two friends seemed to be, the dynamic did kind of shift when the girls got into 6th grade, and I feel like that's always the kind of age that everything seems to go a little bit Pete Tong for young girls. And this is when Anissa Wire came on the scene. Anissa did not like Payton, did not like her, and made it very clear she didn't like her. She was said to be quite cruel to Payton and would often intentionally exclude her from their kind of threesome that they had built. She also had no interest in getting to know Payton or spending any time with Payton, and would often just make solitary plans with Morgan. Morgan herself did kind of try and keep Payton in the friendship group to an extent. Payton said that after a while, the girls started behaving kind of strangely. They had recently become obsessed with a local legend on Wiki. Oscar, God. So the dog gave me the biggest fright there. What's that? Okay, back to our regularly scheduled programme. So the two girls became obsessed with this wiki creepypasta legend named Slender Man. Now, for those who don't know, I'll put a picture on the screen. This is Slender Man. He's big, he's scary, you don't want him at your door. I don't want him at my door. So allegedly, this man comes into children's lives when they need him most. So it's usually the kind of downtrodden kids, to be fair. And then what he does is either abducts them and something sinister happens, or he abducts them but takes them to his happy family mansion in the woods. And this is a story that the girls chose to believe. They believed that people could become proxies of Slender Man, so therefore kind of like servants to Slender Man, and they felt like they wanted to meet him and see if he was a real person. This kind of delusional thought kind of creeped Payton out. She knew for a fact that Slender Man was not a real person, he was not a real story, he was a creepypasta wiki story, and the girl's fascination with him kind of freaked her out. The story is quite creepy. I mean, it's never known whether he murders these children or whether he's their saviour. It's kind of left hanging in the balance. Other stories as well were super creepy. So like I'd mentioned before, you've got the Ben drowned, you know, the guy like bleeding from the eyes and all that stuff. And then you've got the other ones such as like Jeff the Killer, I think he is, and that's the one with the big disgusting like creepy smiley face and no eyelids allegedly. So these kids were totally obsessed with this, and this isn't something that Payton wanted to be a part of. So she decided to gracefully bow out of the friendship and let them have their weird fascination together. But this is when Morgan actually says to Payton that she doesn't want her to leave the friendship group and that they had so much more fun when it was just those two. She kind of guilts Payton into staying in the friendship group. Sadly, things don't really change, except Morgan does make more of an effort to involve Payton in their kind of everyday activities. As time kind of went on in the friendship group, the obsession with Slender Man, especially for Anissa, started going a little bit too far. Anissa even claimed to have seen Slender Man on the local bus. Yeah, I can just see that, just casually catching the number 49 into town. Totally Anissa. Unfortunately, Payton's good nature kept her hanging around with the girls, and she had no clue that the two were planning something completely terrifying for her, and they had something in store that she could never have guessed. On the 31st of May, like I said, the day after Morgan's birthday, the girls had decided to go to the park, but as you know, it ended in tragedy for young Payton. Payton's mum and dad, Stacey and Joe, were then called to inform them of the horrific thing that had happened to their daughter in the park that day. Her mum, Stacey, then asked about the other girls, Morgan and Anissa, and asked if they were okay, if they'd been harmed in the attack, and police had no clue who she was speaking about because as far as they were concerned, this was an isolated incident and there was no one else in the park that had been injured. When they looked into this, they realised from Stacey and also from Morgan's parents that the girls had been at a sleepover together and then had attended the park together as well. The police at first were actually on this manhunt thinking those girls had been injured along with their friend. They were thinking that they could possibly be victims as well and were perhaps abducted at the scene. So police go on this hunt for these two young girls and they do eventually find them about 4.5 miles away from the park. So they've walked quite a wee bit, but when they find the two girls, they notice that Morgan herself is covered in blood with not a scratch on her. They also notice that Anissa is completely clean and not distressed looking at all. The two girls have been walking for quite some time, and their destination, I'm just gonna say, will shock you, ladies and gentlemen, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Naturally, the two girls are under a bit of suspicion and they are brought in for questioning. Police don't really understand what's happened here, and when they go into one of the girls' bags, they actually find the blooded knife used in the attack. It was a giant bread knife that had been taken from Morgan Geyser's home, and she had actually stuffed it in her bag just as the girls were leaving to go to the park. So this was a completely premeditated attack, especially on Morgan's part, as the knife had come from her home. They then realise in the interview room that this has now taken a turn. There's been a shift because both of these girls just start flapping their gums and they've got a confession to make. We'll chat about Morgan. So Morgan herself, that's the girl whose birthday it was, who was Payton's long-term best friend. She was completely emotionless, calm, not crying, not shaking, nothing. She was chilling like well, like a villain, to be fair. And she was just not reacting at all to anything the police were asking. She was really just acting so nonchalant, like relaxing in her chair. She was leaning back. She was kind of like chewing her hair. I've always said this, and if they start chewing random inanimate things, that's just when you know it's a no-no. And bear in mind at this point as well that she is still caked in blood. They find her covered in blood. Not only that, she's wearing big, long, black, fingerless gloves, big lace gloves, because you know, that was just in fashion, I'm sure, back in the day. So she literally looks like something out of a horror movie, and she couldn't even be bothered that literally she's got someone else's bodily fluids all over her. Anissa, on the other hand, she's trembling, she's crying, she's shaking, she's upset. Essentially, she doesn't really actually cry any tears, but we've all said about that. You can't really say much about that. I just always think that's a bit of a red flag, if I'm honest. So Anissa's just sitting in police custody, and this is where things get a little bit gritty. You see, Wisconsin has some very odd laws. Not going to judge. Yeah, it's a bit weird. So essentially, anyone over the age of 10 is seen in the eyes of the law in Wisconsin as an adult, and they don't have the rights to have their parent there unless they ask for them, but they can be interrogated without their parents, and if they don't ask for them, that's a-okay. They also have the right to legal counsel. However, it's not mandatory that someone of a legal stature sits in the room with them either. So these kids were literally being interrogated in an adult interrogation setting without any supervision at the age of 12. So we need to bear that in mind as well, because, you know, whatever happened, but that's not okay still. So Anissa's completely alone in this, and she's trembling, shaking, crying, and then out of nowhere, Anissa just asks, can you tell me how far we walked? Because I'm not an athletic person usually, and I'd just really like to know how far we walked. You what? You what? Like, are you okay? Do you need a hand? No? Okay. The girls then say that they've got these secret code names for this murder operation, and their names are Kitty, who is Morgan, and then Scorpion. Ooh, so deadly. At some point during the interview, Anissa then kind of perks up and starts talking about the reason that they were going to kill their friend was due to a man who threatened them. Now, at this point, please do kind of be like, that makes sense, because it doesn't make sense for two young children to murder their best friend in cold blood. And therefore, the girls bringing up this mysterious man who threatened their families, that totally makes sense. But the girls then go on to say that this man, the alleged man who said he would kill all of their families if they didn't murder young Payton. I mean, I don't really know why someone would order a hit on a 12-year-old girl who listens to teeny bopper music, but allegedly this man did. And the police start to kind of dig a little bit deeper, ask where they knew this man from, and that's when the girls tell him that they're talking about Slender Man. You know who that is. You know him. And then police are told this story about this Slender Man character who was probably created by some guy who lives in his garden shed and literally just types this up online. But they're told this story about Slender Man and how they thought that if they proved themselves to be his faithful servants, proxies, puppets, whatever you want to call it, then he would allow them to come and live in his castle where the other wiki characters all stay. One big happy Addams family. The girls claimed that this entity lived only a few hours away in a local national park in Wisconsin, and that's where his castle was based. So yeah, there's that. Anissa yet again brings up the fact that she saw him on a bus, allegedly, and then Morgan says how she actually used to communicate with him, and in person he used to come visit her in her house, and they would have these conversations about how they could find him and how they could prove themselves to him. So quite scary stuff when you think about it. These kids were clearly having some sort of hallucinations, and they thought they were seeing Slender Man, or so it seems. Once the police kind of get to grips with this, it becomes so clear that this is not an actual man and it's just a fictional character that these two girls are essentially trying to pin the blame on for this awful crime. Morgan's behaviour Obviously Anissa's is, you know, the whole Fitbit, how many minutes did I walk? That's, you know, weird in itself. But Morgan's behaviour is really, really concerning. Like, watching it, it's actually quite eerie. She's very manipulative, like extremely manipulative. And we said that about last week's case, John Venables. He seems very, very manipulative at the age of like 10, which is terrifying. This little girl's only 12 and she seems to have got it down. Please do try and get a little bit more out of her and ask her about her plan. And that's when she just slips the switch and she's like, it was actually a flawless plan. It was quite a flawless plan, actually. Like, really defending this whole plan to murder her friend, and it's flawless. Is it? Is it flawless? Because you're in the jail. You're in the police station. Did it work out for you? Probably not. She's just got no fear at all. And it does seem like a bit of an act. Like, the things that she says and things like that. Like, one of them are saying, like, what game did you play in the woods? And she says, we played hide and seek. She's like, it's a good game. I love that game. And then she just goes, because I love to hide. Okay. Well, I asked you, but okay. Where do you hide, babe? Do you hide in cupboards with butcher knives? Probably. Now, we Anissa... Nah, I don't feel sorry for Anissa. She's a monster as well. But Anissa does differ slightly from Morgan because she is a bit more kind of open, a bit more giving. However, I feel like she's a bit more honest as well, because Morgan, the whole way through the interview, is saying that she doesn't quite know who got the first stab in, who stabbed Payton first, who it was who attacked her first, and who it was who kind of planned and plotted this murder. She's kind of vague about that, and the reason being is because it was all Morgan. Anissa said that from the get-go, even though she was super interested in Slender Man, it was Morgan that said, if we want to be his proxies, we've got to kill Bella. So this is where it's confusing, because Payton's middle name was Isabella and the girls had another Payton in their class, so they called Payton Isabella. So if you watch the interview tapes, which I will leave a link for them in the description box below for both interviews, I would suggest to watch them because yeah, it's just bizarre. And they called her Bella as a nickname because they didn't want to get her mixed up with other Payton. So she says that in order to become a proxy or this servant, they had to kill Bella, and that was Morgan's idea. She also said that the kitchen knife came from Morgan's house. It was originally planned that Anissa was going to kill Payton, but then she was too squeamish. She had actually hit Payton on the back of the head in the bathroom at the park that day, trying to knock Payton out to make life easier for them for the attack, but Payton didn't go unconscious and she just kind of turned around like, what are you doing? Like, why are you hitting me in this random bathroom? Anissa then kind of shit herself because she realised she wasn't strong enough to properly attack Payton, and she backed out of it, leaving that to Morgan. Morgan was actually the only one who stabbed Payton that day, and when Payton was lying, hiding in the grass, it was actually Morgan who crept along like a little creep and attacked her best friend lying there defenceless. Now, I don't really want to put a lot of stock in the fact that they wholeheartedly believed in this kind of wiki, creepypasta kind of scenario, but I'll just chat you through what was said in the interview. I mean, I don't really believe that that's the only reason they wanted to kill their friend. I believe that they knew she was feeling really uncomfortable in the friendship and they had some sort of kind of control over her, and they didn't want her walking out and telling all their weird creepypasta secrets. I think that might be more so what it is, kind of like a Skylar niche situation. So yeah, I think definitely it wasn't probably all to do with Slender Man. I think they had their own motives to carry out this attack on poor Payton. But yeah, throughout the interview, Anissa just says some really stupid things such as, yeah, that's what I read online, or yeah, that's what the wiki told me. Now, if you have to stop and say, that's what the wiki told me, yeah, you shouldn't be walking this earth, honey. I'm sorry, but no. There's just dumb, and then there's, that's what the wiki told me? Jesus. She then starts rambling into these other Wikipedia characters from Creepypasta, and she brings up Jeff the Killer, who is absolutely petrifying, ladies and gentlebags. I'll just put a tiny picture just in the corner because I don't even want to look at it myself. And allegedly this is a teenage boy. Of course it is. And he's got no eyelids. He's eyelidless, if that's a word, and he has a creepy kind of Glasgow grin, weirdly enough actually, kind of like a Joker smile, slit from here to here, and he then goes around and sets fires, kills people's families, and he even killed his own family. But in his bio there's some interesting facts, such as his strengths and his weaknesses. Now, saddle up, because this is a funny one. So, I'll try and say this so hard without laughing. His weaknesses are unfortunately the human condition. Of course they are. That just sounds so emo. You can just tell the exact kind of guy who would have wrote that. And then also his strengths were swordsmanship. Of course. On guard. I mean, come on, you cannot write this stuff. I mean, well, you can write this stuff. Someone did write this stuff. But swordsmanship? Come on! I can even tell who wrote that. Some lonely dude who's like playing World of Warcraft. No offense to whoever plays World of Warcraft. My boyfriend used to play it, might still play it, and therefore I'm not judging. Okay, I like Star Wars as much as the next person, but come on, girls, like, Jesus Christ. Can you just like imagine some dude sitting at home being like, I like swords. Probably never seen a sword in his life. But weirdly enough, the girls truly believe that these people are real people in real lives. They even said that they traced the name Jeff Woods back to some serial killer when it wasn't even. I actually Googled it because I'm a deep diver, and it came back to a guy called Jeffrey Woods. Yep, that's fine. But he wasn't a serial killer at all. He was involved in a murder that was a robbery that gone wrong in a convenience store, and he wasn't even the one that murdered the clerk. It was one of his friends, and he was allegedly the getaway car. So yeah, I don't really know where they got that info from, but yeah, that's not who Jeff is, honey. You just can't even imagine like the horror that this little girl actually experienced in her last moments, can you? Like, one of the girls, so like I said, they'd given each other nicknames, and Anissa actually screamed at Morgan, aka Kitty, Killer Kitty now, and this poor girl's lying in the dark playing hide and seek with her friends, or so she thinks, when this young girl lunges at her with a bread knife. It was said that during the fight she actually screamed out to Morgan, I trusted you, and then finally, I hate you. Also, even more eerie and just weird, when Morgan was leaping towards her with the knife, she said, don't be scared, I'm just a little kitty. Morgan was shocked that Payton was not dying. She'd been stabbed in the heart and other organs, and therefore they thought that this would be a done deal in this frenzied attack. So when Payton started speaking and was trying to get up and saying that she couldn't see, the girls freaked out and ran away and left Payton there to bleed to death. When they were running away, Anissa screamed back to Payton that she was going to find help, even though she had no intention of that, because they were heading off to Slender Man's mansion. At this point in the interview, both investigators decide to drop a little nugget of wisdom into the girls and inform them that Payton is still alive. Yes, everyone, Payton actually was taken to hospital after she dragged herself from the forest onto a main road where she was found by a local cyclist. She literally dragged herself there with 19 stab wounds to her arms, her chest, her neck and her abdomen. Poor little girl. This 12-year-old girl is an absolute boss biatch. I mean, she's not 12 now, so I can say bitch. But yeah, she's a tough cookie for sure. And when she got to the top of the road, this guy finds her lying there on the side of the road, bleeding out, and he then calls an ambulance and calls the police. And this is how the police got there so fast and actually managed to find Payton in time. Had she been laying there overnight, she probably wouldn't have made it. Payton's injuries were actually near fatal and she needed emergency surgery. Remember, one of the blades actually only missed an artery by 1 millimeter. Had that nicked that artery, she would have bled out in minutes. So she was extremely lucky, but she still had quite a fight ahead of her. And her mum Stacey and her dad Joe were there at her bedside holding a vigil, praying that she would get out of this surgery in one piece. The girls were totally surprised that she had made it, that she hadn't let them kill her. And they were actually kidding on that they were kind of not that shocked. They were like feigning like, oh really? Oh, is she alive? Okay. But you can see the panic in their faces, especially because they ask about her a couple of times and investigators are like, oh, do you not know? she's still alive. Fortunately for the Leutner family, Payton's surgeries are successful and she makes a full recovery. After a few weeks, she is then discharged. Anissa and Morgan were then arrested and charged with first-degree intention of murder. So therefore, they were going to be tried within an adult court. Now, this was the DA's decision. Because it was an adult crime, they sought an adult punishment. And yeah, I don't really know how I feel about that, but we'll get onto that in a minute. The parents of Morgan and Anissa were extremely shocked. They had no clue that any of this conspiracy to commit murder had been even going on. Obviously, hindsight's a beautiful thing. I would never ever pure blame the parents. The girls actually had a really happy upbringing and no one could quite understand exactly where this shift went so wrong for both of the girls until family secrets started spilling out about both of the girls. You see, Morgan's family was kind of happy and everything like that, but her biological father actually had schizophrenia and was a diagnosed schizophrenic. He'd been in and out of treatment centres as a teen himself and had even tried to take his own life several times. He was extremely delusional during his manic episodes, and this was something he was controlling with medication. So therefore, hereditary wise, yes, this could have been passed on to Morgan. Anissa was a little bit different. She had a great upbringing, allegedly. Even though she was a child of divorce, her parents were very amicable. They had a great relationship in regards to co-parenting with the children, and they both had access to the children. So therefore, no one was quite sure what went wrong in Anissa's childhood, and that to this day is still a mystery. During the course of the trial, both girls were given a psychiatric evaluation, and the jury heard of how they had been diagnosed, both of them, with mental disorders. You see, Morgan had been diagnosed with early onset schizophrenia, so therefore she had unfortunately inherited her dad's mental illness, and this had gone unnoticed, untreated by her mum. So her mum did receive quite a lot of flack in the press at the fact that this was someone who was acting extremely emotionless, extremely cold, callous, basically a sociopath with no feeling, and her mum didn't notice. It just made everyone feel that little bit sorry for Morgan, as what she had done was clearly just a cry for help with her mental disorder. There's also Anissa, who, even though she had quite a normal childhood, quite a normal upbringing, she was actually diagnosed with folie à deux, which everyone who watches true crime and has heard about the silent twins is the madness of two, also known as shared psychosis disorder. And therefore, they believed that when she was experiencing slight mental illness, this was only accentuated by the schizophrenia that was showing in Morgan. So when she would think that she was seeing things on the bus and seeing things out the corner of her eye, obviously someone who's experiencing major hallucinations like Morgan is only going to back her up and say, yeah, I saw that too, because she's a compulsive liar as well. So therefore, these two girls were just feeding on each other's mental illness, and sadly this led Anissa down a dark hole that she couldn't climb herself out of. You can just kind of imagine that, can't you? Like, one of them's like, oh, I saw him. Another one's like, I see him too. No one's seen anything at that point. Because of this diagnosis, the jury actually found the girls not guilty by reason of insanity, and they were then sentenced to between 20 to 40 years in the Winnebago Mental Health Institute. It was actually Morgan that was sentenced to the extreme term of 40 years, and Anissa was only sentenced to 20 years, where the girls will receive the correct treatment for their disorders, and also where they will be evaluated on a step-by-step basis, and if they are seen to be ready to return to the public, of course then they will be allowed to exist in the world with everyone else. You do need to also kind of wonder, like, what are the chances that these two people met? These two people were literally like a match and gasoline, and they just ignited when they came together. It's so creepy. It's like the Ken and Barbie killers. Would Karla Homolka have ever killed anyone if she hadn't met him? Maybe not. I think that's the case in a lot of these crimes when there's two people involved. You know, some people would have gone to lead really horrific lives, and then other people would have been completely unassuming. I mean, had Anissa never met Morgan, would she have committed a crime like this? Probably not. But then there's so many evil people out there, so many people who are struggling also with a mental disorder. I'm not saying that that's her fault, you know, it's her brain and how her brain's wired, and I really do hope that Morgan gets the treatment that she deserves, and I really really hope that Anissa does too, and that one day the girls can heal and come back into society. And you know, it's just super sad all round. All these families and all these young girls' lives have been totally impacted by this. I think the main focus of this story has to be Payton Leutner's survival story. Like, she is amazing. The fact this 12-year-old little girl was literally stabbed 19 times by her best friend and didn't let that get her down. She crawled to her own safety and made sure that she was going to make it out alive. I just think she's so impressive, and since the attack she's become even more impressive. She did really well in school, and she's currently studying towards a career in the medical field, which is something that she said she would never have done or found the passion for had this not happened to her. When she saw how well she was treated and how the doctors and nurses saved her life that day, this really led her to want to make a difference in the world and join the medical career. So definitely she says that she's got a lot to thank the girls for, and I know that might sound kind of weird to say that, but I totally understand what she means. She says that she's completely happy with who she is now, and that she's stronger and that she's smarter and she works harder because of this. Yes, it's left her with a few trust issues, but at the end of the day it made her wiser when she was quite a naive young girl to begin with. Both girls are currently, as of this day, as far as I'm aware, still held at the Winnebago Mental Health Institute. However, they have had their fair number of appeals. Morgan has appealed to have her sentence lessened because she doesn't feel that she should have been charged in an adult court of law. And she feels like to this day she was done out of some sort of justice, and that also she should be in a less secure unit. As of March 10th, 2021, Anissa was actually requesting conditional release, and it's not known whether she's been granted this or whether it's been rejected. She hasn't been released as of yet. The girls are around kind of 19, 20 now, so maybe they have changed, maybe they've saw the error of their ways and they've been treated for their symptoms. We just don't know. Hopefully, you know, that's for the doctors to decide and they don't make the wrong decision. Even though this case is completely heartbreaking all round, like I said, there is a few questions that have been raised regarding the diagnosis that was given to both girls about their mental state, because during the investigation it was actually found that both of the girls had been googling some strange things on their computers, you see. One of them had been googling insanity plea, the other one had been googling mental health problems and symptoms, and then someone else had been googling schizophrenia symptoms and double personality symptoms. So therefore, we just don't know. Was it all an act? Are they really in the place they should be? Or were they just two little girls that were far too smart for their own good? Was there ever any Slender Man? I guess that secret lies with them. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. Hope it wasn't too spooky scary for you. I'm a loser, sorry. It's crazy case though, man. It really was. I was reading it and I was like, every 5 minutes. So yeah, it's a really big wild one, but you know what? That survivor story, that gets me every time. Love a survivor story. I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who tunes in every single week. Honestly, guys, yous are my absolute favourite people in the whole world. I just also want to say a big thank you to anyone who's reached out to me to say that my channel has helped them with their own traumas. That to me just solidifies why I'm doing this. And yeah, I just love yous all. And just remember, if you ever need a petition signed, send it my way. If you ever need to vent, send it my way. I'm happy to do that for you. So on that note, please do hit that subscribe button. I'll be here for you guys every Friday and on and off on Wednesdays because I do like a wee supernatural story. Hit that notification bell and give me a big thumbs up on this video. Oh, how orange are my fingies. That actually reminds me of that game, heads down, thumbs up. You ever play that in school? That was a good time. If you want to see what I'm up to 7 days a week, then please do follow me. Not home. Hear that, Slender Man? Not home. On Instagram at Megan True Crime. I also have a TikTok page at megan.truecrime. And yes, if you want to see what I'm up to in my day-to-day life, then also subscribe to my personal vlog channel, Megan T. The link for that's in the description box below. Sorry, that was my dog barking because she's an asshole. Have a fabulous weekend. Lock your doors, don't talk to strangers, and if you're listing your list of skills on a job application, don't put swordsmanship because no one wants to know that, okay? See ya! Oh, it's so orange up in here. Fick 10 disasters number 2. Bye!